Well, I speak German like a Spanish cow, so I will prefer to speak
so that
in English.
Fatih, who is very near, can hear. You know, when I'm choosing the people to have this carte blanche, people like Ken Loach, people like the Dardens, people like Bong Joon-ho, I'm always trying to find people who are sincere, meaning you can make movies and be an asshole, you know? You can make movies about poor people and want to live in palace, you know, when you go to a festival. So I have to find here in Fribourg, because we are a small festival, people who are similar in their mind than the movies they are making. And I was thinking, who is like that? And suddenly, during last summer, there was this Rheingold movie. It will be the premiere in the French part of Switzerland, and the only one, because the movie will not be released. It's too German for the distributor, unfortunately. Yeah, sure. And I saw that he had suddenly his greatest success in Germany, and then it came in the German part of Switzerland, and the first days it was in quite small cinemas, and then, you know, the people having cinemas in the German part had to put the movie in bigger cinemas and bigger and bigger, and it became kind of a huge success in the German part. It's very important for us to understand also what could make that a German movie suddenly have this audience in the German part, you know. After all, we are living in this very strange country where we have four mentalities, four language, at least, I don't know, 1,000 religions, and one of them is cinema. And when I say that, because I'm of the religion of cinema, talking about Fatih Akin is talking about somebody that I admire for very long. You can see that this guy is just creating without any concession, and he's talking about, even in the movies that seems very far from him, he's talking about his own life, his own destiny of being born in Hamburg from Turkish parents. For me, he's an author, and he is one of the best directors in the world, actually, now. So, welcome, Fatih Akin and Matthias Lerf.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you. And thank you in German now. I'm going to be speaking German. Exactly. We have agreed that we'll be having our talk in German, but you can, of course, ask your questions in German, English, French, or Turkish even, whatever you like. I've prepared a half an hour of wonderful descriptions of you, but I'm not going to read it out. You are, to me, one of the best German filmmakers, and I remember when in '89 you came to Locarno and you were at the piazza in Locarno. There was a bunch of guys from Hamburg who rapped before the film was shown. And the film was really a proof of you having seen many American gangster movies, and I wasn't sure at the time whether this was just a one-off thing or whether I was going to meet you again. And indeed, I met you again and again. I was really, really moved when I saw Gegen die Wand at the Berlinale Festival, the film that won the main prize there at the festival. I remember the easiness of Soul Kitchen and the kind of smell, the awful smell of the Goldene Handschuh. It was a film about a murderer, mass murderer who hid his bodies somewhere in basements, and it smelled awfully. And I remember also seeing many other films made by you and being really moved by them. So welcome here, Fatih Akin. And I asked myself, where should we start? There's one thing I need to comment on before we start it. You've been in Switzerland before. Last time it was for the premiere of Soul Kitchen. And a couple of days before you were supposed to be here, you informed us that you weren't coming. We had just a few days before adopted the referendum on the minarets, and you said that for that reason you weren't coming. Why have you decided to be here with us today? This is not meant as a trick question. There were two reasons for not coming. First of them was that I believe in human rights and in the narrative of human rights. And religion and the right to practice one's religion is a human right. Every person should be able to live their faith irrespectively of where they are, especially in the civilized world. And if you believe that the architecture of a house of faith is part of a religion, then, well, okay, then it should be part of a religion. And this popular vote on the minarets, I believe, was something that went against human rights, against basic human rights, and that contradicted my sense of justice. I try not to be a political person, believe me, I really don't. But when it's about this feeling of justice, then I take very impulsive decisions. That was one reason. And the other reason was that I just finished a world tour with my film Soul Kitchen. I was really exhausted and tired. And I thought, oh no, now I have to go to Switzerland. And of course, this popular vote was perfect. It was just at the right time. I said, oh, I'm going to protest against it. And I thought it was a great excuse to stay at home. So now you can choose and pick which reason you prefer. We'll go for the first one. And we've never heard about the second reason, right? And because I'm not tired anymore, I can be here. You said you don't want to be a political person. But I've read things about you, things that I thought were logical. With the earthquake in Turkey, you pleaded for an opening of the border. So when there are important events, you always have a word to say, isn't it? Well, I'm not a political person. In particular, I don't take a part of any sides. The worst thing that can happen to a filmmaker or a singer or an artist, that's when I react badly, is when suddenly you become the kind of, Bono type. I really liked U2. I liked their music, inclusive of Rellingham or maybe Achtung Baby. But once Bono started commenting on everything, I thought, oh my God, why don't you just stick to making good records? This is what I do. I try not to stand out. I don't want to be in the media because of what I say. I want to be seen for the films I make. And sometimes I don't succeed because I'm too impulsive a person, but the earthquake in Turkey is something that affects me more than other conflicts in the world, of course. And really, part of me and even my mother expect that I just shut up, that I don't get involved and just make my films. And part of me wants to be like that. Your mother doesn't want you to speak up. She said, don't get involved. And I probably say the same thing to my children. Just stay out of this. But I don't manage all the times because I'm very impulsive. and then I can't shut up. Yeah, let's talk about your films. Yes, please. Where shall we start? Shall we maybe start with your last film? Some of you have probably seen it or are going to see it. We don't want to spoil it for you, but Rheingold is something that makes you think of Wagner, really, of Siegfried, of operas. It's not about that, really, is it? It's about German mythology. I think I can tell you that much without spoiling it. Many who deal with Rata, a German Kurdish rapper who became famous not just by his music and or political statements, but by having committed a spectacular gold robbery a few years ago. And this robbery is not really what I want to look at. I was more interested in Hadar's crazy and mad life. He's so chaotic, and that's something that fascinated me. I just wanted to look at the whole picture, not just the robbery, but obviously the robbery is the kind of central event. And I won't to spoil it for you, but he lives near the Rhine, near the Drachenfels, the Dragon Rock, where the Nibelungen saga was set. He's from Turkestan, of course, not from Germany. And all this area is about gold, where's the gold hidden, etc. And I saw a parallel and I thought, both of these things are about German mythology. You can take Chata to any ghetto in a big German city, Marburg and Frankfurt, in Hamburg, wherever you go, and 8-year-old kids will run towards him and scream, where's the gold, where's the gold? So he's become a myth himself. And my films are about reflecting on Germany and on important issues to do with Germany. So I saw this film as a film in that tradition. It's a German film looking at German myths. And of course there's this biographical connection between a person from Kurdistan living in Germany. So one newspaper wrote that the Nibelungen saga or Siegfried is turned into kind of person, low-life person from abroad. Well, I think I said that, yes, but of course he's got a bad reputation in Germany. He was not very politically correct and he was slightly anti-Semitic. And whenever I see an artist that has, as a person, not a very good reputation, is not a nice person, I try to separate the art from the person. So I forgive. It's not about forgiving the person for what they've done, but I say, it's not really the film's or the music's fault. You should really separate these two things, and that's what I saw Chata as. Chata's father, who was a composer, preferred Beethoven to Wagner, and I believe that Wagner is bombastic on screen. I think of Terence Malick, or Coppola in particular. It's more cinematographic in terms of music than Beethoven. Well, and that's not a spoiler. It's a film about a person who's alive, who has become a myth herself in Germany, who's very well known. How do you work with someone who's as famous as that? Because he might not be happy with the things you do, or some of the things you do. Well, he was intelligent enough to trust me. Well, first of all, he was surprised to have a film made about him. His narrative was, well, I, have live in this ivory tower with my intellectual attitude. That's how he saw me. It's not me at all. And I'm going to kind of descend into the gutter and do a film about a German gangster rapper. And he's like, why are you doing that? I'm not worth it, he said to me. And I told him, look, well, your father was a composer, your mother was a teacher, you came to Germany, you've got this background. Oh, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. And all of this is highly interesting to me, and I want to do a film about this. But I said, you have to trust me. It's going to be my film, my oeuvre. It's not going to become a product that you can use for PR purposes. Well, maybe you can sell records with it or kofte with it. I don't care. Do it. But I'm going to do the film the way I want to do it. And he said, okay. But of course, I needed to have him by my side. I do not have that much of an idea of this world. I thought I knew more about the street life because I came from a difficult place. I thought I knew about this, but I needed to find out how these young people talk. How do they use German language? What kind of boots or shoes do they wear? What's that jogging suit going to look like? What watches do they wear, etc.? I mean, a watch has an entirely different value to these people than to us. It is a status symbol, and this is why I needed to have Kata by my side. So he was there all the time. Well, he wasn't there every day, but he was there regularly. He could have spent more time on the set. He drove my crew crazy. He drove them crazy. He just changed everything around, and he said, oh, those tracksuits are not right. You have to change them, you have to change them. And I said, well, but we're going to be shooting in half an hour. He said, I don't care, you have to get different ones. And it was like this all the time. He said, that's not right, that's not going to work. And I always reacted to what he said. I've made documentaries as well. And I like when things flow and I react to influences. And you can do that to a certain extent with a film, depending on the budget. But if you have a 10 million film with 100 people crew, then every change is as if the Titanic had to correct its route for 5 meters and there's icebergs everywhere. If I read correctly, it's the most successful premiere and launch of a German film ever. But I've also heard that it was a film that was difficult to finance. How's that? How can Fatih Akin have problems financing a film? Didn't people believe in it? Well, German films are quite often subsidized with cultural funds. And the people sitting in the committees deciding what film's going to be done and which not have a kind of, I don't know what to call it, a cultural responsibility or political responsibility or an educational mandate. It's tax money that they pay out after all. And some of the films I've done before, a Turkish girl that runs away from home, it's about cultural differences, etc. They said, well, that's something worth subsidizing. But when you tell them you're going to make a film about a gangster rapper who was in prison and who didn't give away where he hit the gold and who beat women, and all of a sudden it was like, well, this is not a good topic for a film, because he does not show any remorse. There's no moment in the film where he shows remorse. And I did my best to make sure that this was not that obvious. You know, I wasn't pointing at him saying, well, he shows no remorse. But I'm showing the consequence of what he does. The audience sees the consequences. Whether he sees them, I'm not sure. Alfred Hitchcock once said, when they reproached him when he filmed the window to the film, the main character was a voyeur. He said Jimmy Stewart was a voyeur. He said he's watching people get changed, etc. And Alfred Hitchcock said, I love cinema too much to be making films that impose morals. And I think that's a very intelligent answer. And the audience is cleverer than the people in the committees, I believe. Viewers are intelligent enough to distinguish between right and wrong. We're not talking about Rambo. But this character is really shady. And therefore, some of the cultural institutions that were financing the film or had to finance the film had their doubts. Last question, otherwise we're really going to spoil the film for everyone. He told you where the gold is? No, of course not. Carte and I were really close. We've become friends over time. And I'm not going to censor myself. I have my view, I have my opinion of things, but we've become friends. And one of the reasons why he accepted me as a friend is that I've never asked him about the gold. I come from a place where you don't ask such things, so I know that I should not ask that question. Well, there's a few tickets left, so if you want to see Rheingold at 9, go and get your tickets now. I've just heard something, not sure whether it's 100% correct, but when I showed my previous films in Switzerland, they didn't premiere in the French and German part at the same time. It was always the other way round. And Thierry talked about it earlier on. It has to do with distributors and their strategy. Rheingold is shown by Pate or distributed by Pate, and they control the French-speaking areas. And I believe that the French-speaking part of Switzerland, also part of it, maybe it's shown in June, because in June the film will be shown in France. I cannot believe that a film that was so successful in the German-speaking part of Switzerland won't be shown in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, even though it's a German film and a German rapper. But make sure you go and see the film if you have an opportunity today. Otherwise, there might be some streaming, but something we want to avoid recommending. This is a film you have to see on the big screen. It's made for the big screen. The reason why this film was so successful in cinema is that, well, it was a post-COVID film. And many people told me, well, it's not going to work, it's post-COVID, people don't go to cinemas anymore. And I've never broken the 1 million limit. It was a post-COVID film, people ran to the cinemas. And I think it's because this film works on the big screen. It might work on a TV screen as well, but you should really see it in the cinema. You will regret it otherwise. So the big screen. Okay, let's take a large step back. You said you come from a difficult neighborhood. I've once heard that when you think of your schoolmates, most of them have become criminals or dealers. Well, friends from the playground, not from school. How did you end up becoming a filmmaker, coming from such a background? Well, in the end, you never know. You never know what God has planned for you. Oh yeah, but maybe yes. It has to do with the carte blanche, just remember. Tonight, the festival shows a film called Fist of Fury. It's a film with Bruce Lee. And it's the first film I ever saw. Or, well, the first 15 minutes of the film were my first contact with film. I had a cousin, and this cousin has a Super 8 projector in the 80s. That's before VHS. And every time we visited him, well, the family visited him, usually on a Sunday, we would get to see the first 15 minutes of Fist of Fury. Always the same 15 minutes. Yes, well, back then you would go to a shopping mall and you were able to buy Super 8 rolls, as you would, then be by VHS later on. And either you had a 90-minute film that was cut down to 20 minutes. That's how I saw Enter the Dragon, a Bruce Lee film as well. I only saw 20 minutes of Enter the Dragon. And then there was this system as you would have it in the cinema earlier on. Every 15 minutes you would have a change of act and you could only buy them individually. So he bought the 15 minutes of Fist of Fury. And of course you can watch it on TV. You had to darken the room, to close the windows, close the curtains, switch off the light, and then you projected it onto the wall. And it must have been around 79, 80. I was about 5 or 6 years old. And the first 15 minutes of this film, that was to me as if I was taking speed. I never forgotten it, ever in my life. And you always had to rewind it to see it from the beginning again, and you were able to watch it backwards. It's the first time I've ever seen a film backwards. You've never seen a film backwards in your life. It was that magic of cinema. And it really got me. Whatever it was gang fights outside, on the streets, gang wars. But it was this fascination for film, this love for film, that never let go of me again. Today you said you're going to watch it yourself. Have you ever seen it in a cinema again? I think I saw him once in a cinema with my wife Monique, who's sitting over there. I believe, because we saw so many films before we had kids, we spent our life in the cinema. I think we've seen it once 20 years ago in a small cinema somewhere in the outskirts of Hamburg, but I don't remember well anymore. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. Well, it's always difficult with films that you love and that you have such a close connection with from childhood. Could be that you don't like them anymore. You're not afraid of that? Bruce Lee is reliable. Well, I know the film is good. I've seen it again years ago. There's 4.5 great films with Bruce Lee. The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon, Enter the Dragon, and Game of Dead. It was only half of it because he died during the shooting of the film. And the second film, Fist of Fury, that is probably the best film, maybe because I saw it as the first film ever in my childhood, but it's the best film, I believe, with Bruce Lee. You're also a great Tarantino fan. And there's this scene once where Bruce Lee is made fun of. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. All Bruce Lee films hated that scene. His daughter didn't like it either. The film is great. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is okay. I like the film as a whole. I saw it in Cannes when it premiered. But I didn't like that scene where they made fun of Bruce Lee. I really didn't. I can understand that. Well, you've been given a carte blanche here at the festival. You're a film freak. You watch an endless amount of films. You had to suggest 6 films. How did you do that? Oh, it was a bit like being a DJ and DJing with vinyl. I was a DJ for some time, and when you work with a computer, you have lots of choices, but when you work with vinyl, you have to make careful selections because vinyls are very heavy and you can only take so many bags of them with you. So it's a hard choice you have to make. So I have a big cupboard with DVDs. I've got 2,000 films in there, and I said to myself, well, I will have to... Well, these films are films that I have collected over the past 20 years, ever since DVDs came out. Important to me because I like the camera move, because there's just maybe one scene that I adore. So I made a list and then broke it down to maybe 100 films. I said, okay, six I had to submit, yeah? So I said, all right. And then I went from 100 to 50, that worked, and then from 50 down to 25. That was hard. And then I had to go down to 10 and then to 6. And that was really, really tough. That was a tough choice. Killer Darlings, I mean, all my favorite films. And I had a look at the list and I said to myself, well, maybe I could pick films that have to do with Rheingold and are connected amongst themselves as well. And then I thought, these films will have to be an eclectic choice, not just Turkish films or films without music, etc. I thought I'm going to make a choice that maybe also kind of reflects my work. I've made about 10 films overall, plus, and these films are all very different, different genres, etc. And I thought that my choice of films should reflect this eclecticism. So I don't know whether you know the list. There's Kieślowski, Story 3, Super Cop. I think Thierry, who really kind of follows that line at this festival as well, was very happy with your choice. Where shall we start with? Kieślowski, and maybe a highly cultural film. That was the first film by Kieślowski, Amateur. Is it the first one or early film at least? What fascinated you from that film? I remember seeing this film when I was young. It's a film about a cameraman. And we kept doing like this when I was young and looking at the world through our hands. I discovered Kieślowski as a film student by the Three Colors, so I started at the end. I was a child, kind of 80s child. And I discovered Kieślowski through his film Three Colors. And when I was at film school, I said to myself, I need to look at the short films. Decalogue, oh my God, a film about killing, oh my God, and then a film about love, a short film. I said, that's a Turkish film, it's so full of passion. And then I kind of watched all of his films, and only very late I discovered Amateur. I think it's the last one I saw, and it was the film I liked most. Do you like the best all his films? Yes. I like all of them, some bit more, some bit less. When I like a film, it's not just I like it a bit or I like it much. That's not the right approach for me. I think of what this film does to me. I try to think of how much of my own personality is attracted by this film, how it resonates for me. And Amateur is a film about a filmmaker. And I like films about filmmakers. And when I see myself in that film, when I identify myself with that particular film, then these films tend to be very demanding and challenging for me. Filmmaking is my destiny. Destiny? Why? Well, it's my passion as well, of course. But I do not think that I chose filmmaking. It's no pathetic bullshit. I believe that filmmaking chose me at the end of the day. That's how it was. And I hate filmmaking too. I love it, and I hate it at the same time. My children, I don't hate my children, I love my children, that's it. But my love for filmmaking is a different kind of love. Let me mention other film. There's a film, The Fableman by Steven Spielberg. It's in the cinemas right now. I'm going to spoil one scene. And the uncle comes and talks to the young Spielberg, is an uncle from Israel, the most Jewish of all relatives, and he lives with them 3 days, and he understands that his nephew lives art, and he says to him, you love art, it's going to be the end of you. You're going to love your parents, but you're going to love your art more. And the boy nods, and I just saw myself in that scene. I want to love my parents more than filmmaking, but that's the way it is. So it's a very deep but destructive love. It's like Oscar Wilde. You love what destroys you, and what destroys you is something you love. That's the way it is. That's what filmmaking is to me. And this very fine line between love and destruction and madness, that's what this film is for me, and that's why I saw there. And this film moved me. I mean, this guy loses his woman because of filmmaking. He's just filming, and all the unionists in the factory are telling him to stop, and the party tells him to stop. He loses his job. He becomes a laughing stock. His wife tells him, please stop, and he cannot stop. And that is a truth of life, and that's why this film means so much to me. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, I always talk a lot about films. Unfortunately, we only have 90 minutes at our disposal. I'm going to try to be short, says Fatih Akin. No, please don't. It's really interesting. But you've mentioned polystory already. So what fascinates you in that film? Well, Jackie Chan is just a whole set of works. I could have picked any Jackie Chan film. Jackie Chan brings lots of childhood memories. It's like a Mickey Mouse to me. I met him in Cannes once. I was there with my best friend Adamos Kustok, and we were really cool. He's cool from Hamburg, and we thought Mickey Rourke, don't care. And when Jackie Chan arrived, we were like, oh my God, we're freaking out, Jackie Chan, come on here. It's like Mickey Mouse, seeing Mickey Mouse, for real. And similar to Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan is a character that I know from my VHS time, not as early as Bruce Lee, a few years later. And the first Jackie Chan film I saw, one of my favorite films, is The Drunken Master. And I remember writing dialogues for my second short film. And my first short movie was based on Pulp Fiction, and for my second short movie I wanted to move away from this, and I said I need to write dialogues like Jackie Chan martial arts scenes, and I haven't forgotten this to this day. When Jackie Chan does martial arts, and he's Buster Keaton. That's a fascinating thing in Jackie Chan. And of course, Buster Keaton is a role model for Jackie Chan. It's the purest form of cinema. You could sit on a plane and you need to use the bathroom. You go to the bathroom and there's all these people next to you watching films, and you can't see them because there's no sound, and you look at it and then you stop because you see something. It's always going to be a random minute, whatever something catches you. What is it going to be? And Jackie Chan is something you just cannot stop watching. His complete works, whatever second you're watching, you're just going to get caught. It's so visual. And Police Story is a film that is inspired in Adventures in Rio by Philipp de Broca. Police Story 3 is about traveling. And traveling was important for my films as well. And Police Story 3 was an influence for my film Julie, so it's a change of settings. And then, of course, Philipp de Broca's Adventures in Rio. And these films, of course, are interconnected. And then I was, of course, very happy because I chose the film Police Story 3 because Michel Yeoh also has a role in it. Michel Yeoh is a hero to me ever since the 80s. Wing Chun master, Tai Chi. And then she gets the Oscar. And of course, she's also in Police Story 3. She got married in the 80s, a millionaire, I believe. And she already was an action star in Hong Kong. And her husband didn't want her to continue acting, so she stopped. And Police Story 3, 92, was the first film she did after she divorced. Well, what's nice is that the director, Lenny Tong, no, the film the Daniels brothers, had initially written the role for Jackie Chan, but he rejected him. Michel Yeoh then accepted the role, isn't it? Oh, that's his fault. I didn't know that story. Or maybe that's just a myth about this film. Now let's jump to the next film. Let's move on to Girls in Uniform. Girls in Uniform. It's a German film from the 1920s, 30s, beginning of the 30s. Why the hell did you choose that film? What's so special about it? Well, these are films from my youth. And in my youth, the films I saw were films on TV, Sunday afternoon, for example. And these are films that have left the biggest mark on me, left the biggest impression. They don't know all these really big movies. Ewig ruft der Berg, The Mountain Calls You Forever, etc. We've looked at these films as a family. There was nothing else, and the whole family sat there, and these were films that the entire family watched. And for a 12-year-old child, these films, are very impressive. I have a daughter who watches Wednesday today, but I watched films as Es geschah am helllichten Tage happens in broad daylight with Kara Kruger, for example. Then there was another film that impressed me when I was 10 years old. So that was the Romy Schneider version from back 58. Something. It was a German-French co-production, and that film is just amazing. And I couldn't forget about it. And only much later, when we wrote Marlene, my authors and I, the series about Marlene Dietrich, there was one passage. Well, we start filming Marlene Dietrich's daughter at a private school, and the author, who knows much more about films than I, Arthur Weichel, said to me, you have to watch Mädchen in Uniform, Girls in Uniform, the 31 film by, what's her name? What's the filmmaker's name? Leontine Sagan. I think it was her only film in Germany. The Nazis banned the film because it spoke of homosexuality. So yeah. So I discovered the old version, the original, when I researched on the Marlene film, and I preferred it to the 1985 version, which I had already loved. So it was filmed by a woman, the 1931 version, and it was so ahead of its time. It was so courageous, so straight, so honest, so incredibly intense. Now, sometimes you watch these films back from the 30s and you find them difficult to watch because of the speed. They're very slow, etc. But you could you would watch this film as it is today and you would love it. So I knew I had to have one female filmmaker on my carte blanche. You don't have Turkish films on the carte blanche, so why is that? I was surprised. I was surprised myself. I only now realized that I had not selected a Turkish film. I initially had one, my favorite Turkish film. Without this film, Musimbif by Yavuz Turgul, back from 1983, is a film that my film An die Wand would be nothing without. But there was no way of obtaining it. I have a VHS version of this film from Turkey without subtitles. It's really wobbly and bad quality. It's impossible to obtain the film. I've tried to have this film restored, but I haven't had the chance yet. So Yavuz Turgul is a very good filmmaker. I suggested another film by him, but it was impossible to obtain a copy of it as well. So I thought, okay, I could have picked a Yunus Güney film, but his films are well known, so I thought, okay, well, no Turkish film then. We could talk about all your films, but an hour has already passed. Time flies. So let me now maybe open the debate to include the audience. If we have time, we'll come back to the other films, but maybe the audience will have other questions that I will have never thought of. So I suggest that we have the microphone circulating. Does anyone have a first question? There's someone there in the middle. Shortly before we start, well, the other two films on the list is Once Upon a Time in High School and Beat Street. Okay, your question. Guru from Berlin. Happy to be here, to hear you. I wanted to ask you about your background. Did your background help you? When your parents are Turkish, you live in Germany, do you have lots of possibilities to make films? My first film I saw of you was Solino. I really loved it. Okay. Well, my background, you mean my parents' origin, definitely had a major influence on me as a filmmaker. And it still has. If you have a background like this, you have a different lens to look through. You know, the iPhone 12 has 3 lenses, the iPhone 5 or the iPhone 5, different types of lenses, different sizes. And you can set your iPhone differently. And I have 2 lenses, not 3. But I have them thanks to my Turkish background. I could and still can look at certain things in Germany from the point of view of my parents with the kind of Turkish glasses, and then I compare them with my view looking at them from a German point of view. And same thing goes for Turkey. If I wanted to, I could look at things differently. So 2 lenses for me. It's better than 1 lens. And this is something I've always considered an advantage. There's filmmakers like Polanski or Milos Forman who make entire films just with 1 lens, and they're masterpieces. Haneke does the same thing probably. He's 1 lens and he creates masterpieces. So, but I have two lenses. I like eclectic works. I like colorful films. And Solino was my first film. Rainer Klausmann was my cameraman. He's here today. If you want to ask questions to my cameraman, Rainer Klausmann, I'm sure Rainer will answer them. And my wife, Monique Akin, is responsible for casting. So if anyone has questions regarding casting, just address them to my wife, Monique Akin. Well, I'm going to ask Rainer Klausmann a question. So he's a Swiss cameraman. You've made many films together. And there's the rumor that this film was the last one you've done together. Is this a rumor? Can you confirm it? But first question to you, how did you choose a Swiss cameraman? How did it work? What connects you? Well, before I became a filmmaker, before I started on this path to filmmaking, I earned my money as an actor. I played in pre-primetime series, German films, etc. And at some point, it's just like 1 or 2 days of filming usually. And at some point, they were looking for someone who was going to be beaten up. That was wrong casting for me, definitely. And it was a film by Oliver Hirschbiegel. It was called Trickster, and Rainer Klausmann was the cameraman. That's how we met. And at the set, it was a German set, and they told me the cameraman is really strict. The cameraman. And I'm someone who doesn't really remember his lines very well. And I thought, oh my God, a strict cameraman. Jesus, he's going to really do me in. So he looked at me when he got there with that kind of very special look, and he uses that special look when a new actor comes on stage. Like he's like looking at him and praising him. Is he good for something, or is he a pain in the ass? He always does it. It's so funny. Every time someone new, he will look at them like that. And I thought, oh my God. And so I tried really hard, and I got everything done, first, second round, around, and I was really impressed by him and his work. He was sitting on a wheelchair, had the camera on his lap, and sometime would pull him along. And at some point I thought he couldn't walk. And then I realized, no, he's doing camera moves like that. And I never forgot it. And when in July I started preparing my second film, the head of production of that film, who was also a Swiss lady, told me that she knows a Swiss cameraman who works in Germany very often. He's very good, he's fast, he's strict, and it ended up being Rainer. So we almost started working together in Juli, but then decided for a different cameraman, because that was the cameraman of La Haine, one of my favorite films, and I thought, okay, this is a chance that I just cannot miss. And it was okay. The concept of Im Juli was that I wanted this film to look like Tintin in terms of colors and everything. And Pierre said, Hergé doesn't use shading in his comics. So he tried to get rid of the shade, and he tried to get rid of them. Oh my God, have you ever tried that? It's impossible. We had 1,000 lamps, and the actors weren't unable to do anything. They had markings everywhere. It was like the films in the 1920s where they had these huge lamps. And then production for Solido said, not again, we're not having him again, get the Swiss guy. And so I started working with him, and that's it. Maybe a question to Rainer Klausmann. If someone could pass the microphone to him. Filming with Fatih Akin, is it just as fun as this talk, or can it be strict too? Well, it's true that I'm very strict with actors. I think they earn so much money, they just have to do a good job. And I think that an actor has to know his lines when he comes on stage. It can't be that there's 40 or 80 people standing around because someone can't memorize his lines. It's not fair. And this is why I really hold a grudge against people who cannot memorize their lines. And as regards carte, I would just walk away because he was getting everything wrong all the time. He kept having to remind him of his lines. It was just terrible. It was pain. And other than that, it was great fun. It's always great fun working with Fatih. We've known each other for about 10-15 years. And obviously we spend a long time together, from the first idea of a film to its development. And of course, we'll always know how things work, and we've worked so closely that we know intuitively what the other things. So is it really over? Yes. I said if he can't find anyone else, and if he says he's going to kill himself because he hasn't got a good cameraman, then he can call me again. But of course, it's difficult to find a good cameraman. The chemistry must be right. So yeah. Next question in the front. Well, first of all, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all your films, for your wonderful works. What do you think about series? Many renowned filmmakers and actors are now starting this business involving series. There's good series on TV and in cinema, of course. My question is, are we going to see series by Fatih Akin in the future as well? What do you think about series? What's your take on them? Well, if I had the opportunity to make films forever, I would just make films for the cinema forever. I watch series. I'm just watching Cobra Kai, the fourth series now. And of course there's cult series, really good ones. Well, Rainer says that I'm patient on the set, but ask my wife whether I'm patient. I would be far too impatient to make a series. I once met a filmmaker, Paolo Sorrentino, who had just filmed The Young Pope, and Sorrentino is the personification of cinema because he makes films for the big screen. And I asked him, how was it to make that series? And he said, it was like working at a bank. And that really got me down with my feet on the ground, it just made me realize that I'm not cut out for that. A film, being on a set for 50 days or 60 days, like circus life. You live in trailers, you travel to places, people eat, you have lines, and someone jokes around all the time. It's like a circus. I like to breathe circus air. Now, if I were to film for TV, and if it feels like working in a bank, as Sorrentino says, it's something I don't want to do. It's, you go to work in the morning, you sit at your computer, go back home, done. If I had to do this to put food on the table for my kids, I would do it. If I had debts and I had to pay them off, by doing it, I would do it. If there was nothing else to do, if there was no cinema, and I would be banned from making films, because my films are not moral enough and I don't get any funds, I would do it. But other than that, I would always prefer films for the big screen. I have another question. We keep reading about you making a series with Diana Kruger about Marlene Dietrich. Is that true, or is that just a rumor? Well, oh my God, what I'm going to tell you, if I say something, it's going to be making headlines tomorrow. Well, we're amongst ourselves. Well, everything's recorded, isn't it? Well, right, what am I going to tell you? I'm working on a series, that's correct. But in the olden days, and I'm thinking of Bertolucci's times, 1900s, that were last century, that were great films. The Last Emperor, 4 hours, I mean, that was a proper film, not a Marvel film that lasts 3 hours. The film is just a trip, takes you into a different world, and your day's gone, Once Upon a Time is a film that you should watch and take a picnic basket with you. Now, if I had the possibility, I try to write Marlene in that tradition. We're going to divide it into 6 parts. And then we'll show it at a festival like Fribourg, where I can show it in one go with a 15-minute break to go and use the bathroom before you watch the next 3 hours. That's how I'd like to do it. Let's see if it's going to work. Now I was very diplomatic, right? That was diplomatic. I think we can print that. It's going to make good headlines. Any other questions from the audience? In the far back.
Hello. It's great to see you in person. Yes. Khatar, your character is Kurdish, from Iranian Kurdistan, and you are a Turkish, but of course you are a different Turkish who has proved to be a friend of Kurds also. But I wonder, how did you navigate these differences, ethno-social and otherwise, with Khatar in your relation, both before and during the movie? And how do you think your movie will be received by some of the Turkish audience, who is, and because Khatar is very outspoken about his Kurdishness, he presents, he shows extreme consciousness about that too, also as a form of defiance of anti-Kurdish sentiments. So what do you think of this? I'm very curious. Thank you.
I answer this in German, right? Because
ja, Deutsch, weil es gibt eine Übersetzung.
Yeah. Otherwise it will be confusing. Also, guck mal, das,
well, now if I get to know a person in a relationship, then I'm not going to think, well, he's a Kurd or he's a Turk, or I have to get a ladder and build a bridge. That's not how I think. I'm either going to get along with him or not. It all goes beyond ethnic origins. Now, of course, there's some conflicts that have to do with daily politics, I'd say, that have brought a lot of tension to the relationship between some Kurds and Turks. But that was never anything that we talked about. I spoke of injustice and justice earlier on. I spoke of how I see things. I have my own compass. And I really try not to let anyone instrumentalize me. If you get to know someone who and become friends with someone who has a different political affiliation, then, well, maybe, I don't know. But I don't think in those categories. The only categories I think in, especially for that film, was that I wanted Kurdish to be spoken in the film, Sorani Kurdish, and it mustn't sound strange. Are there any Sorani Kurds, any actors we could get? And my wife cast a few Sorani Kurds, and then our language coach made sure that Iranian actors who spoke Persian were trained to speak Sorani Kurds. So it's closer to it than Kirmanji Kurdish or Zaza Kurdish and Sorani. I don't speak any Kurdish, but I suddenly became an expert on the different Kurdish languages. And I learned a great deal about the Kurds and the different linguistic groups. And I tried to depict this as realistically as possible. I'm going to... Is it a spoiler? No? Okay. So when we premiered in Cologne, and there was a premiere in Hanover as well, Hanover is a center of Yezids. That's another tribe again. And they got along very well with Qatar and with Kurds and identified with them. And the Yezids in the cinema were so moved by the film. And I don't think it was because the film was kind of siding with their cause. It was not at all like that. They were moved because what they saw in the film was very close to what they experienced. It was very authentic. And they identified with the film, and that's the biggest compliment they could have given me. Now, there might be voices in Turkey who might make a big thing about it. Well, I made a film about mass murder as well. I've done other things that are much more politically controversial. That's not a category I'm going to think of in. I really just make films that interest me. I think of whether maybe there's an audience that might like the film, but mostly it's about whether I'm interested in this particular topic. Any other questions? In the front, left. Please wait for the microphone because we're recording everything. Well, thank you very much for being here. We're going to have the lady behind you ask a question first. As regards the casting process, how does that work? What's important for this process? How do you find the right people? And what helps finding them? Thank you very much. Well, that's a wonderful question. How do you find the right people? Monique Akin finds the right people, as a general rule. Well, sometimes I think, well, I need a star. How are we going to do about what are we going to do about it, etc. But if we go beyond that and think, well, then it's Monique who does it. I'm not quite sure what her network is, because I usually see her at the computer. Sometimes she will spend days and weeks at the computer making notes and calling people. And then she prepares a list of people for me. And the way she picks people is very unconventional and interesting, especially concerning German films. 9 out of 10 German films will always have the same actors, and I don't like that. I want to see new people. I want to see unknown people. I don't want to see the same faces over and over again. And of course, there's a reason for it. The audience has not seen these people in other films and cannot connect them with other films. They're like a blank sheet. It's the character they will see and not the actor having played other roles. Monique lives with me. She knows what films I like, which films I hate. She hears me talking about films a lot, I think, yeah? And therefore she knows what I would like to have in my films. I call her casting method avant-garde. It really goes against the flow, especially when it comes to my last film, Rheingold and Der Goldene Handschuh, the golden glove. If I hadn't done it, he had fit him, he would have said that's the best cast film I've ever seen. And this is due to my wife, but how she does it, I don't know. You'd have to ask herself. Shall we ask her? Maybe you can explain. Hi. Well, it's not witchcraft. There's endless databases, both in Germany and here in Switzerland, and you will be able to find any actor, despite or irrespective of how much they've worked. Maybe, of course, there's actors who haven't got their own manager or agency, and then you have to look for them. But I, don't work on many projects over the course of a year, so I have time to look for people and take the time. Some casting people work with agencies, saving this, which enables them to save time because they don't have to sit and watch through those catalogs or something I don't do. But Fatih is very picky. He has a very clear idea of what he wants, and I try to meet his demands. Thank you very much. There's another question further back. I have a question to Monique. 2 questions, actually. How do you become a casting agent? That's my question to Monique. And my second question is to both of you. Would you make a film in Switzerland at some point? Or what city would you pick? Or what topic would it be? Thank you. Well, if I've understood the question correctly, it's about how you become a casting director. Well, I've done something entirely different before. I studied the German language, theatre, I did all sorts of things. But I always helped out Fatih since his second short film. We've done the castings together. I've sat and helped him and supported him. Usually it's a profession that people kind of come into without having learned it. Usually it's students of the German language and of linguistics and actresses quite often, surprisingly. So which city? Switzerland? Rheingold in Switzerland? Gold in Switzerland. Well, I could tell you that I've always wanted to do a remake of Heidi, but forget that. It's not true. I work from Hamburg regularly because I'm a pragmatic person. I want to always pick the shortest route. That's how I travel. But I prefer to shoot films at home. So when I saw the Kieślowski film, And this madness, I thought, well, maybe I could get lost in filming and maybe I would end up doing something like Apocalypse Now. But I also enjoy, seeing my dog in the morning, taking the kids to school. I want some residual balance in my life. If I were to make a film in Switzerland, then, well, I'm interested in Remarque. Not just because im Westen nichts Neues. I always liked that film, liked the character. I know a lot about Remarque, especially because I've preparing this Marlene Dietrich series. And Remarque was always very important for Marlene Dietrich. Remarque was the person who probably trained her politically, or maybe was her political mentor in some way, and she's always admired him. She's always admired his books. And I believe that he lived in Switzerland at the end of his life. He ended up fleeing from the Nazis. They banned his works. First, they tried to get him to come to Germany. He didn't do that. He recognized early on what was happening. His sister remained in Germany, and the Nazis killed her ultimately. And he left in, what was it? He lived where? In Ticino, in the canton of Ticino. I've never been there before. But if I were to do something, don't print that in the newspapers tomorrow. Bullshit. I'm not going to do a film about Remarque, but it's just very hypothetical. Pure speculation, okay? Thank you very much. Any other questions? Someone in the far back. May I ask my question in French? Thank you very much for these films. Thank you very much for the carte blanche, which a selection which enables us to discover wonderful films. Thanks for coming to the festival. How and when, at what age did you start filming? And should I watch Soul Kitchen or Rheingold tonight? Good question.
Gute Frage.
Do you want to repeat the question in German? The question was when you started filming in earnest, and if I've understood this correctly, whether you should watch Soul Kitchen or Rheingold tonight. I would opt for Rheingold, I think. Soul Kitchen, well, might not be shown in Switzerland in this part. Rheingold is fun. Rheingold is a kind of best-of. Honestly, I'd been working on something else on Marlene, but then Corona mattered, and Black Lives Matters, etc. And it wasn't possible to do Marlene. I then had to find an alternative. I had to do a film. I have my office and I have people working for me. I have to make films to get money coming in. It's not just for me. I have other people working for me, mothers who have to feed their kids. So what do you do in that situation? A project has come, gone astray. Now, if you were a musician, you'd probably do a greatest hits album, right? And Rheingold is the kind of greatest hits album with a few new songs. Soul Kitchen is a film you'll be able to see another day, but flip a coin. And the other question was, when did you start filming? Well, anyone can pick up a mobile phone and start filming. My daughter makes short films, and they look really nice. Everyone dreamt of that earlier. I mean, we always dreamt when we were small. We dreamed to be able to make films. Everyone would be able to make films. Back in the 80s or early 90s, making a film, maybe I was 13, 14, 15, that was so far away. It was Hollywood. It was like possible. Hamburg, Hollywood, long distance. And there was a special house for young people, giving them the opportunity to spend time there, because we had a difficult neighborhood. And a social worker came in one day, bringing with him a camera. And really, he was my first producer, my original producer. He asked us, well, do you want to make a film? Anyone in? And everyone was interested in participating, but I was the only one interested in making it. So that was my first small film for the House of the Youth. I did the whole thing. I wrote the script. I filmed them. The social worker cut them. My first films, they're not on YouTube, and I was 16 years old. Thank you very much. I've just been told that we have time for one last question. Whose honor is it going to be? Over there, but please wait for the mic. Now, when you have a new project in the pipeline, when you're gathering ideas, how do you proceed? Does the content determine the genre, or are you interested in a genre first and then you pick a film? Well, there's no recipe for that, unfortunately. It's a very irrational decision. And quite frankly, I don't know myself right now how I usually do that. Now, if I have an original content, as in Gegen die Wand or Aus dem Nichts, and that's becoming ever more rare over the years, because I want the content, the original content, to be original as well. Earlier, when I was young, my ideas would just mushroom. They would just flow out of me. But the older I get, the more tired I get. You know the business, you know the industry, you know that something is not going to sell, you know that they're going to probably not finance their film, etc. And then you start thinking more carefully and with less, bravery about new topics. Now, when I go for an original idea, there's usually a specific topic that interests me. It's not something that I read in the paper. It's just a sort of collection of ideas that I start spinning. Well, maybe to give you an idea, I read something, or friends of mine leave Turkey and move to Germany because they have problems with the government, and there's a huge brain drain. Through 250,000 educated students, artists, scientists leave Turkey, and the country is kind of drying out culturally. And something kind of catches my mind, so to speak. It's magnetic, and I start writing down notes, meet people, and someone tells me, a Turk who's come to Germany, that she's reading Stefan Zweig to understand Germans better. And I write it down. I think that's a great idea. That's how it happens. And then over years, I mean, it's over several years, I'm just collecting ideas and notes. And then at some point, I put it all together, and in the background, I start developing an idea history, and I look at all the artifacts, the ideas I've collected, and then I try to put them together like a puzzle piece. It's like an archaeologist trying to bring something back to life, and then I have my first idea for a script, and when I have my first draft of the story, not the actual script, that's the point where many problems start resolving by themselves. I don't know how writing works. I have no idea. You're just writing, and you always have a problem. You don't know how to solve it. You don't know how to continue. And then all of a sudden it clicks and everything starts flowing. Oh, she goes through the left door. Why didn't I think of it any earlier? So that's how I proceed with original content. But I could also have an agency in Hollywood. They sent me scripts, and one of those many stupid scripts they sent me is special. I like it, and I think I could do it, and then I take it on. Or I read a book like The Golden Glove. I've always wanted to do a horror film. It's set in Hamburg, and I saw it as a challenge. The novel was a challenge. I mean, the content there, he can't get a hard on, so he starts slapping his penis against the door. I thought, oh my God, can I do that? Gaspar Noé would do it. I tell myself. Fassbinder would have done it. Yeah. And then you think, do you have the balls? Do you have the courage to do that? Are you going to show a man slamming his penis against the door frame because he can't get a hard on? Well, just to give you an anecdote, it's just about, just a challenge, and I find it interesting. It makes me do a film, and unfortunately, it's never about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get 1 million viewers, because it never works like that. And you never know what's going to happen. I didn't know that Rheingold was going to be such a success. I didn't know that Gegen die Wand was going to be such a success. With Juli and Solino, I tried to be a commercial filmmaker. I thought, I'm going to cast Christiane Pauli, etc. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to do a small film that no one's going to watch for little money. I'm going to do now because I have some money now and nobody's going to watch it anyway. And Gegen die Wand was created and it was a huge success. And then I thought, I'm going to do the cut and I'm going to get an Oscar and the Golden Palm. And what did I get? A kick in the butt. Now, what about the genre? Is that something that entices you? Is that something that kind of fuels your artistic process? Sets a frame that inspires you? Very rarely. I rarely say, well, I want to do a film in a particular genre. It's usually simultaneously. I think, oh, Heinz Strumpf's novel challenges me. It's nice. It could be a wonderful horror film. It's not about, I'm going to do a thriller because I like Thriller by Michael Jackson. That's not how it works. It's the idea. I mean, The Cut, for example, was a film where I thought I wanted to deal with mass murder, with murder committed on an entire population. And then I had additional ideas about it. I'm afraid time is up. Of course, we could sit here for a long time. I think we're going to talk to you once you've done your Swiss project, so we'll have to come and present it here. Remark, yes. And thank you very much, Fatih Akin, for being here. It was great having you here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, merci.
Grazie.
Grazie.